Oh, she is?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Just two of them. I'll get it for you. All right, thanks.
I know. Yeah. That's what happens.
But now with this.
Yeah.
All rise.
Please be seated. Thank you, Your Honor. Now, Officer Freeman, I believe on one of the documents or slides that you created, you had traffic from August the 1st until August 1st, 2015, until after the murder of Dr. Kendra Hatcher. However, looking at State's Exhibit 153, according to Kristopher Love's phone, he did not start communicating with Crystal Cortes until August the 28th, 2015 via phone. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So when you talk about this larger time span in which we had on a previous document, it really was just a short amount of time where all of those talks and text messages and communications rose into the hundreds.
Correct.
Now, before the break, I was going to publish an excerpt from State's Exhibit number 150, which is the cell phone of defendant Brenda Delgado. Commissioner Publisher? You may.
Is this audio or video or what?
It's both, Your Honor. And so looking at the screen, is this the actual program that you see when you complete an extraction on a cell phone?
Yes, this is a UFED reader.
Okay, and so all those columns on the left are items that we can click in and search through and analyze data on that cell phone?
Correct. If you look over to the left, it's got all the different columns that you can click, and when you click one open, it opens into this little frame right here.
Okay, and then when you look to the right on your screen, to the video on the bottom of that, and that's the metadata in which, what is that, I guess I should say?
The metadata is when you take a picture or a video, it captures the date, the time, and the latitude and the longitude of that image.
Okay, and so this particular image was created on August the 27th of 2015,
Yes, ma'am.
and it says 7:20, 48 p.m.,
Yes, ma'am.
but here it says -5
Yes, ma'am.
in UTC. What does that indicate?
where I made the mistake and said -6 instead of -5.
Okay. Commissioner Thomas.
Yes, report. Finance report, of course. According to the note.
And so, Officer Freeman, that was a video from the defendant, Brenda Delgado's phone, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and what appeared to be the content of that conversation?
Talking about a silencer,
Okay. A silencer for a,
possible handgun.
and was that a 40 caliber Smith & Wesson?
Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely.
Officer Freeman, you got these shaded areas on these maps. I'm showing one that was just previously shown, fifth slide of the prosecutor. Number one, you take this, the program itself creates that shaded area, correct?
Yes, sir.
You do not do something to make this happen. You feed in the known data from the UFED report into PenLink, and then you ask PenLink to do this, right?
So let me just correct you just real quick. I mean, it's just the UFED reader is from the phone. We're not getting cell tower from the phone itself. So the call detail records, it comes into PenLink. I tell PenLink to then push it out to a map, and then it creates this.
What I'm getting at is, you create this by putting in information in a format it can read, and then it spits out a map.
Correct.
It's not anything that you yourself, with manipulation, human error, I guess is where I'm going with this. Nothing you do changes where this shaded area will be, right?
No.
And then the fact is, if I make a phone call, hypothetically, I make a phone call here, and I hit whatever cell phone tower I hit, that doesn't necessarily mean I'm in the shaded area. I could be approaching it, leaving it, I could be in that area. It would still hit, and you would still get this map, correct?
That's correct.
All right, now, obviously you're familiar with the layout of Dallas.
Yes, sir.
You and I have known each other a long time, right?
That's correct, sir.
All right. If we look, I'm just taking this particular one. This is the slide showing Kristopher Cortes' cell, September 2, 2015 at 7:40 p.m., although the slide has it military. This is showing the 1700 Cedar Springs Road. That is the address of the building where Dr. Hatcher was killed, correct?
Correct.
If we look at this, it's just an aerial map by Google Earth, but if we start putting in like where is all this stuff and how far apart is everything, am I correct that this, at the end of my pen, as I follow that area around, that's the Trinity River, correct?
Yes, sir, that is.
If we look at the area, I think 1700 Cedar Springs, and I'm going to kind of just sort of draw a little area inside there. That is the entirety of downtown Dallas, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
If we go to the northwest, we get right there, that line going northwest. That's literally Lemon Avenue going toward Love Field, correct?
Yes, sir.
If we look at this just a little further, to show how, what I'm getting at, how wide is this area? We've got all of downtown Dallas. We're going out as far northwest as where I'm circling right there. That is literally Love Field Airport, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
If we come over to the east, northeast of the center of the circle, to show how far this entire shaded area is, this sort of green area going north and south, that is White Rock Lake, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
If we go down here, it literally will go south far enough to get into the Cedars, correct?
Yes, sir.
It's got the whole South Exchange where 30 and 35 and all that stuff that they may be using now. All that comes together and even further south than that.
Yes, sir.
It's a wide area, true statement?
True.
Would it be true that this technology does not permit you to ever put somebody in an exact location?
I can't put a body in an exact location. I can put the phone in the exact location, in an approximate area to the tower.
Well, using this shaded map program, correct?
Yes, sir.
In other words, if I sat here and made a phone call from this cell phone right now, I'd show up probably on that exact same map if it's the same.
You'd probably hit off one of the downtown towers.
And even though all of us see me here in this courtroom and we know precisely where I am, it is potential, we have the potential, depending upon the company that I use and what information they give you and what cell tower. The reality is the technology could say that I am on my way to White Rock Lake to go paddle one of the kayaks, or I am about to catch a flight at Love Field, or I'm south, either west or south of the Trinity River. But we all know I'm right here in this courtroom, yet I could appear on cell map to be in any one of those places, correct?
Correct.
You had mentioned when you looked at Crystal Cortes' telephone, you were surprised in that the amount of data was so small, correct?
Correct.
If you look at particularly younger people, you would tend to see a vast amount of data on the phone, correct?
Correct.
This one, for whatever reason, before you got it, didn't have anything close to what you would expect, correct?
Yes, sir.
You've looked at thousands, right?
Yes, sir.
Would it be a truthful statement, nobody in your position would disagree with that opinion, that something, Crystal's phone is missing an incredible amount of data?
That's correct.
Brenda's phone, on the other hand, didn't have that problem, did it?
I can't remember the date, but it went back pretty far.
Nothing, when you got that, you didn't look at it and say, oh, wow, this doesn't look right with Brenda's phone, did you?
No, sir.
With Brenda's phone, there's no transactions deleted either, are there?
I would have to look at the UFED report to see. I
Do you recall any?
would have to look at the UFED report. I can't say for certain or not.
Well, what we saw here and what was presented to the jury when we started talking about transactions deleted, every single one of those was on Crystal Cortes' phone, wasn't it?
I believe so, yes, sir.
What did you do you've given us a description of what you did. You get the extraction through the UFED, you get the call data records, and you run it through PenLink. Once you get this, what did you do to verify the accuracy of your maps?
All I did was just put them straight to the maps and looked at them and gave them off to Barnes.
So what we have, so you ran it through PenLink.
Yes.
And then what we have is what you got.
Yes, sir.
Specifically, what training had you had with PenLink?
I've had,
Did you go specifically to PenLink, or were you trained by somebody who did?
I was trained by PenLink itself.
Right, just 1 week course?
Yes, it's a 1 week course. It was out at HIDA.
And
Where?
HIDA, H-I-D-T-A.
Just tell them what that stands for.
I believe it's High Intensity Drug Enforcement Task Force or Drug Task Force. I can't remember what the actual acronym is.
It's a grant by some government agency where they have high intensity narcotics enforcement.
Yes.
It's an acronym for that, right?
That's correct.
That was who funded it, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, so you go to the 1 week course. When did you go?
believe it was several years ago.
Right, have you done the annual recertifications?
No, I went to Cellbrite training last year.
Right, but specifically on Penlink, have you gone to any of the one-year annual recertification courses?
No, sir, we're waiting to purchase the new upgraded version of Penlink, so we're waiting to make sure it gets purchased, and they'll send me off to training for that.
All right, so that's controlled by City of Dallas. They're not going to send you for recertification when they know something new's coming out.
Correct.
Right. You've been with the police for a long time. Are there budget constraints that affect how things get done within the city?
Sustained.
Well, is it a money thing that they didn't send you?
Sustained.
The bottom line is they didn't, for whatever reason, they did not send you, true?
Correct, sir.
Beyond running it through Penlink, did you do anything to validate the findings?
No.
Specifically, did you ever run it through the TRACS program from Z-Tex?
No, well, we only use Penlink.
You know Z-Tex, you know what I'm talking about.
Correct.
Nothing further, Your Honor?
Thank you, sir. You may stand down. You're free to leave the courthouse.
Thank you.
Take all David Spence.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this cause will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, sir. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Hello, I'm David Spence, and I'm supervisor of the Trace Evidence Section at the Southwestern Institute of Forensic Sciences here in Dallas.
Well, first of all, what is the Southwestern Institute of Forensic Sciences, Mr. Spence?
The Southwestern Institute of Forensic Sciences, we refer to as SWIFS, is the Dallas County Crime Lab. We're associated with the Dallas County Medical Examiner's Office.
Now, the Dallas County Crime Lab, just so we understand, does that belong to the DA's office or any police agency, or are you guys available for anybody to come in and hire?
Now, we're a Dallas County agency, and we're also a fee-for-service crime laboratory. So we will do forensic analysis for anyone who submits evidence for analysis, as long as it's something that we're qualified to do testing in. So we work cases for local police departments. We'll do casework for defense attorneys, private individuals, whoever has evidence that needs to be analyzed.
Mr. Spence, you mentioned that you are a trace evidence examiner. Explain to the jury what that is.
Okay, a trace evidence examiner is an examiner who analyzes a wide variety of different types of evidence. Specifically in our lab, we examine gunshot residues to determine whether or not somebody has fired a gun, handled a gun, or been in proximity of a gun when it was fired. We also do hair comparisons and hair identification. We do bloodstain pattern analysis. We also do ignitable liquid residue analysis, among different types of trace evidence analysis.
As the supervisor of that section, what qualifications do you have to hold that position?
I have a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry with a minor in mathematics. I was then hired by the Texas Department of Public Safety Crime Lab in October of 1986. I started as a breath test technical supervisor. For a year and a half in Wichita Falls, I was in charge of the breath test supervisor program. We were the guys that worked on the intoxilizer and did certifications for the breath test operators. I then transferred to the headquarters crime laboratory in Austin, Texas for the Texas DPS crime lab system. I worked in the trace evidence unit for approximately 9.5 years. And during those years in Austin, I learned all different, or was trained in all different aspects of trace evidence examinations. Subsequent to that, I then transferred to the Houston DPS crime lab, where I was a trace evidence examiner and a drug chemist for approximately 2.5 years. And I then took the position here as trace evidence supervisor in Dallas, and I've been here for just over 20 years now.
Mr. Spence, I want to focus on another thing you mentioned earlier, some types of testing that you do. You said gunshot residue. I want to focus on that. What is gunshot residue, first of all?
So gunshot residue, there are two different types of gunshot residue, but specifically what I'm talking about today is what we call primer gunshot residue. These are gunshot residue particles that originate within the primer of a cartridge case. So the primer would be the ignition source within the cartridge. So when you fire a weapon, the firing pin of the weapon strikes the primer cup. The primer then ignites, causing the gunpowder to ignite, causing the projectile to be expelled from the weapon. So during that process, these primer mixture components fuse together at very high temperatures and pressure. They liquefy, and then they instantaneously solidify into molten, or from molten state into solid metallic particles. And oftentimes those particles end up on the hands of the person shooting the weapon, as well as people in proximity of the weapon, or people that handle a gun that has been fired.
So it's possible for samples to be taken from a person's body, hands, wherever, clothing, submitted to you for testing to determine if there are any gunshot residue particles present?
That is correct, yes.
Well, I want to direct your attention to a specific case number. It's IFS 15-14219. Are you familiar with that case number?
Yes, I am.
Did you conduct any testing in reference to that particular case number?
Yes, I did.
Now, was the victim in that particular case number, is that Kendra Hatcher?
Yes, it is, Kendra Hatcher.
Did you receive any evidence for testing of gunshot residue?
Yes, I did.
Tell the jury what you received.
I received a gunshot residue evidence collection kit collected from the hands of Kendra Hatcher.
Where did that collection come from? Who did the collection?
So the collection was performed in the Dallas County Medical Examiner's office at the time of autopsy.
Is the medical examiner's office there at Swift where you guys are?
Yes, we're actually in the same building complex.
And just so we're clear, the medical examiner gets the samples and then sends them to you for testing. Is that right?
Correct. They will do the evidence collection and then submit those to the evidence registration unit. And then when the analyst is ready to perform the analysis, we then check out the evidence from the evidence registration unit.
Now, where were the samples that were submitted to you for testing, where were they taken from Kendra Hatcher?
The samples, there are two samples in the gunshot residue kit. One sample stub is to be used on the back of the left hand, and the other is from the back of the right hand. So we have two sample collection devices, one for the left hand, one for the right hand.
Mr. Spence, after conducting your analysis, were you able to determine whether there was gunshot residue on either the back of the left or right hand of Kendra Hatcher?
Yes, I was. I performed the analysis on these sample stubs using a scanning electron microscope with an X-ray detector, and I was able to identify 6 particles characteristic of primary gunshot residue on those sample stubs. Specifically, there were 5 particles collected or identified on the sample stub, item 5-9-1 from the back of the left hand, and 1 particle characteristic of primary gunshot residue collected on the sample stub, item 5-9-2. 5-9-2, collected from the back of the right hand of Kendra Hatcher.
So there was gunshot residue on the back of both of her hands. Is that what your findings were?
That is correct, yes.
Mr. Spence, what does it tell you as an expert in the field of gunshot residue analysis when you see gunshot residue on the victim's hands? What conclusions can you draw?
So the conclusions would be that the individual either fired a gun or handled a gun that had been fired or was in the proximity of a gun when the gun was fired. So these are gunshot residue particles that were deposited on the hand, so it indicates one of those three possibilities.
Your Honor, may I step into the wall?
Okay?
Mr. Spence, I'd like to give you a hypothetical scenario and ask your opinion. If Kendra Hatcher had her hands behind her head and was shot execution style in the back of the head, coming out her chin, would your findings be consistent with that hypothetical situation?
Yes, it would.
Mr. Spence, as part of your duties, did you prepare a report documenting exactly what you just told this jury your findings were?
Yes, I did.
The State's Exhibit 227, an exact copy of your report.
Yes, State Exhibit 227 is a copy of the gunshot residue analysis test report related to laboratory case number IFS-15-14219, request number 52. And it details the gunshot residue analysis that I performed on this case. And it's a two-page report, and it's signed with my name, David W. Spence.
And this is basically what you just told the jury.
That is correct, yes.
State Officer State Exhibit 227.
Objection here, sir.
Yes.
Mr. Spence, I appreciate you taking time to come down today and testify. I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Milner?
No questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir. You may stand down. You're free to leave the courthouse.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
State Call Special Agent Dan Kaase.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this cause will be the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may.
Can you please state your name, spell your last name for court?
Daniel Kaase, K-A-A, S as in Sam, E as in Echo.
And how are you employed?
I'm a special agent with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives.
And first of all, tell us what the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives.
ATF is the federal agency responsible for the enforcement of laws pertaining to alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives.
And tell me what a special agent is.
A special agent is pretty much a police officer or a criminal investigator that investigates and enforces those laws.
How long have you been with ATF? Is that what we call it, ATF?
ATF, yes, sir. I've been with ATF since July of 2000.
And currently, what is your role there?
With my current position in ATF right now, I'm a special agent canine handler with ATF, as well as a certified explosive specialist with ATF, and I'm stationed here in Dallas, Texas, in Dallas Group 2.
And tell me what your training has been to lead you to the point where you're able to hold it.
As an ATF special agent, we're required to go through a 3-month school through investigative procedures. Since I've become a special agent canine handler, I've been required to attend a school where I have to, a 3-month school, where I have to work with a canine on the detection of explosive odor and explosive materials.
And where did you do that training?
Front Royal, Virginia.
And do you have a partner that you work with?
I do.
And what's your partner's name?
My partner's name currently is Titan, T-I-T-A-N.
And tell me about Titan.
Titan is an explosive detection canine. He is a Labrador Retriever. He's currently about 7.5 to 8 years old. This year was his last year with us. We're retiring Titan this year. Titan is a dog that can detect a combination of 19,000 explosive odors to include military, commercial, and homemade explosives.
How long have you been a partner with Titan?
Since November of 2013.
And how did you become, did you apply to go to this school, or how did you
I did.
become this position?
I did. I applied to go to the school, interview process, and then the selection was made, and I had to attend the school in Front Royal.
So when you get to the school, is Titan already there?
He is.
And you're partnered with him there?
I am. Yes, sir.
And at that point in time, do you have to train him how to detect these odors, or how does that work?
No, sir. ATF, the whole process takes approximately 26 to 28 weeks. Prior to the handlers or the new handlers arriving, ATF procures the canines, which are normal Labrador retrievers. We only use Labrador retrievers. And what they do at that time is they switch them, because most dogs are bowl fed. They then change them to where they change their food methodology to where the dogs now get fed when they find explosives. So what happens for 16 to 17 weeks, the trainers at ATF will start what we call imprinting the dog on explosive odors. Basically, the way it goes is they put an explosive odor, explosive material in a small sniffer tin. They tap the tin, the dog sniffs, it's rewarded as it sits. So they do this every single day, 365 days a year, for the dog to eat. So the dog now, in order to eat, has to smell explosive odor.
So by the time you get to this school, the dog already knows what to do.
The dog already knows the odors, that's correct.
And so you're there now learning how to deal with the dog, and as far as working in the field.
To understand the dog's final response and to basically develop a bond between myself and the dog.
So after you get through that school, then does Titan leave with you?
He does.
And does he live with you?
He does.
And do you take care of him every day?
Every single day.
And does he still feed out of your hand or a bowl, or how does that work?
Since he's been retired, I'm currently in Virginia obtaining another dog, another explosive detection dog. But every day, once we left that academy, every single day I was responsible for feeding Titan. But this feeding, I must set up a problem for him to solve, which involves explosive materials. So every single day, for 365 days a year, he had to eat. So I had to set these problems up in order for him to find explosives. And there were times that he did not find the explosives, so he was not able to eat. But they equate the explosives with food. That very rarely happened, but there were times that that did happen.
But would you do this every day at 5 o'clock, or how would you?
Oh, no, sir. No, sir. We would vary our training methodology throughout the day, because you never know when you're going to receive the phone call to come out and assist state, local, or federal agencies. So we don't, most people feed their dogs, say, at 7 or 8 in the morning, and maybe in the evening at 4 or 5. We can't do that, because then the dogs start developing a time pattern. So what we do is we vary the times that the dog feeds. Sometimes we'll feed him sporadically throughout the days, but every single time is a training or an actual call out. Or sometimes we'll feed early in the morning, a majority of their food, and a little bit in the evenings. There's times that I've done a training throughout the day and then get called out at 2 o'clock in the morning. Well, the dog has already had his rations of food, but he's we look for dogs that have high drives for food.
Okay. What's your new dog's name?
My new dog's name is Dutch.
How long will you be working out there in Virginia with Dutch?
I've been in the school now for approximately 2.5 months. I have 2 months left, and once we come back, we will start working again back in my area of responsibility.
And where is your area of responsibility?
My current area of responsibility, there's only 30 ATF canine handlers in the U.S. My area of responsibility is in the Dallas Field Division, which covers everything from Shreveport, if you can draw a straight line, Shreveport all the way to Douglas, New Mexico. Half the entire state of New Mexico, half the entire state of Texas, and the entire state of Oklahoma, and I'm the only canine handler responsible for that area.
And so what's Titan's responsibility right now, if that's your responsibility?
Titan's responsibility right now is to, right now he's at the house enjoying my family.
Okay. Do you start eating from a bowl now?
He is now. I've come back and I've noticed he's gained a few pounds. So
Okay, so he becomes your dog then?
he does.
So your responsibility, how do you get called out to a scene, or how does that work?
Basically, a lot of departments, I've worked, for example, like with federally with like the Secret Service, U.S. Marshal Service, sometimes Border Patrol call me out. Local police departments will learn that my dog can find explosive materials. Now these materials, for example, are like shell casings, firearms, projectiles, those types of things. There are very few dog teams in Dallas, Fort Worth, or even the nation that are trained on finding these types of materials, firearms and shell casings. Once the word gets out, you become very popular with a lot of police departments, and it's not uncommon for me to get 3 or 4 calls a day, ranging from areas from Shreveport, like I said, all the way to New Mexico, and I have to try to work everybody in to try to help them all out.
You touched on this a little bit, but we keep talking about explosives, but and we'll learn a little bit more about how shell casings work from another witness that will come in here. But just briefly, inside a shell casing or a bullet,
Correct.
right? There's a projectile, and then there's the shell casing.
There's the projectile, there's the powder, there's the primary high explosive inside that lights the powder and forces the bullet out.
So every time that a bullet is fired and the projectile goes out the end of a firearm, there's a minor, respectively talking, but there's an explosion that happens inside that gun.
It's a controlled explosion inside of a metal, yes,
Okay.
chamber.
And that's what Titan's able to detect.
He's able to detect the explosive material that it's ejected or is the residue that's left on areas after the bullet is fired.
I'm going to direct your attention to October 2nd of 2015. Were you in the Dallas area that day?
I was.
And were you doing a demonstration over at the Dallas Police Department?
I was.
Tell us about that, what you were doing.
That morning, I had worked to set up a demonstration of the dog of Titan to show a number of homicide detectives as well as officers that worked shootings, gang detectives, that type of thing, of what my dog could do as far as helping them in their investigation about finding shell casings, about finding projectiles, about finding thrown firearms. These demonstrations, normally I'll set out expended shell casings out into the grass. I normally ask an officer, please take the magazine out of your firearm and hide it somewhere for me. At that time, I'll deploy Titan, either on or off leash, and Titan will go out and find all the shell casings. He'll get rewarded at that time. It's a great tool because the officers actually get to see the dog work, and then they get my number and they start calling.
Now, when Titan alerts on something, what is his tell? How do you know that he's alerted?
Titan's final response when he finds explosive odor is to sit. He doesn't bark, he doesn't scratch, he doesn't bite, he just sits. He'll sit there, and the way Titan used to do it, he would put his nose down and sit and then wouldn't move. He was waiting for his food at that time. When I'd ask him to show me, he'd go right back down, put his nose almost on the explosive material or the explosive odor, and then we worked as a team, I would look to see what he'd found, and then I would pay him.
After your demonstration on October 2nd, 2015, did one of the detectives there, Detective Sayers, or one of the detectives there, did they ask you for some help in searching the car?
They did.
And where did you go? Were you at DVD headquarters at the time?
Yes, sir. There's a small grassy area outside there, and we did it right there. And within 5 or 10 minutes of the termination of the demonstration, I was approached by Detective Sayers.
And where did you have to go then for the search?
He directed me to go to the impound lot. I followed them over to the Dallas Police Department impound lot where they store vehicles.
And did he specifically want you to look at the blue Sebring?
I didn't know what he wanted me to look at. He gave me no information about what we were doing there. Basically said he had a search warrant. We went out to the impound lot, and at that point I asked him just general question, what am I looking for? And Detective Sayers said, you're the one with the dog, you tell me. And so it's kind of funny, but it's better for me not to know anything about the investigation because I let the dog work.
At that time, did you know the name of Kristopher Love or Kendra Hatcher or Brenda Delgado or Kristopher Cortes?
I knew nothing about the case.
Permission to approach? I'm going to show you what's marked as State's Exhibit number 193 and 201. Is this the blue Sebring that you did wind up, or the Titan did wind up searching?
Yes.
We'll offer State's Exhibits 193 and 201. No objection.
Admitted.
Permission to publish?
You may.
She was from Mark State's Exhibit number 193. Is this the blue Sebring that you and Titan searched?
It is, sir.
Okay, tell us how that worked.
We arrived at the location, and initially I went over and took a look at the Sebring, looked around to see if there's going to be anything that would hamper the dog's search around, either broken glass, that type of thing, or inside the vehicle. Never opened up the vehicle, just looked through the windows. At that time, the vehicle was closed, all the windows were up. Detective Sayers asked me at that time if he wanted me to open up if I wanted him to open up the car doors, and I said no, just leave them closed where they are right there. I got Titan out of the vehicle. We approached the backside of the vehicle and we began an exterior search. That's how we normally search vehicles. We work from the outside in. So I ran Titan, on leash, I presented the vehicle, started working around in a counterclockwise motion to the front, worked around the front of the vehicle, down the driver's side, into the place where I initiated the search. We stopped that search at that time. Titan gave no indication or what we call a change of behavior on the exterior of the vehicle. At that time, I asked Detective Sayers or one of the detectives to open up the front driver's side door of the vehicle. I approached the driver's side door. I unclipped Titan from his leash because I want him to work independent inside the vehicle, me holding on to him. So I unclipped the leash and I gave him the command to seek, which is the dog's command to begin his search. Titan jumped up into the front driver's side area, front seat, and began searching. Within a few seconds, I could detect a distinct change of behavior in my dog's normal search activities. He immediately threw his nose up in the air, and there was a compartment as you come up the front of the windshield. There's like a small compartment area. He was really searching hard. His nose was up, but then he never gave me a final response. He started working his way down the windshield, got to the dashboard, and went right to an area around an open ashtray, like a plastic area right in the middle of the console. You can really hear the dog's nose working at that time. Boom, 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 boom. And immediately he sat, once he got close to the open ashtray, he sat right there. The other detectives were on the passenger side with closed windows, and I remember one of them saying, "You told us that when he sits, that means there's explosive odor." And I said, "That's his final response, but I'm not done searching the vehicle." So I pulled Titan out, moved him into the back seat area. Titan, I gave him the command to seek. He searched the back seat area. I pulled him out there, moved back to the trunk area of the vehicle. I hooked him up into the trunk area, searched it. No change of behavior, no final response. Brought him back out, went around to the passenger side, got back in, and had him search again. And again, he went straight to the area of the open ashtray and gave me a final response. He verified his initial. So I pulled him out, and we're looking at a dashboard. It's just a plastic dashboard with an open ashtray. And I have to explain to the detectives at that time that these are what we call trace odor dogs. And trace odor dogs mean that if you touch an explosive with your hands and you touch another area, my dog has been trained to find the area that you just touched. A prime example would be during the Olympic Park bombing, Eric Rudolph, when he constructed explosives, he drove the vehicle to the Olympic Park to deliver the explosives. An ATF canine alerted on the steering wheel. You look at the steering wheel, you see nothing. The dog can smell the explosives. They took that steering wheel, did laboratory testing, and determined that there was explosive material on the steering wheel. So I had to explain to the detectives that you're looking at the dashboard. I don't know what's here. The dog's not telling me. He alerted me twice right here. This is where I would start my search warrant. That's all I had to give him. Couldn't say anything else.
Let me show you what's marked as State's Exhibit 201. This is the interior of that Sebring. When you said that center console kind of area, are we talking about? Sorry. You're talking about this area right there?
Yes, sir. You see the open ashtray and the 3 control knobs? It was right in the area of the open ashtray and the 3 control knobs.
Now, when you said that the Titan was first kind of throwing his nose up in that direction,
Yes.
what do you account for that?
You have to remember that odor is like air. It catches the air. So if in a hot car, the odor tends to rise. So as the doors would open, the only thing I can equate it to is that the odor was coming from the back of the dash, riding up the window, going up the top. So the dog was basically catching the odor at the top of the vehicle and working its way down. It goes to the strongest odor. So basically he picked it up at the very top of the windshield, worked his way down, and we call it going to source. He went to the source of the odor that was going up.
Now, at that point in time, did you let the Dallas detectives, you said direct them towards where they should search?
Yes.
And then did you put Titan on?
I did. I put Titan up. I gave him verbal praise at that time. I did not give him food, but I gave him verbal praise at that time. And I put him up, and I had started to depart the area. I had actually started driving away. When Detective Sayers, I saw him in my rearview mirror, start running after me. And he was waving his hand saying, "Your dog had found a gun." And at first I thought he was being funny. I didn't know what he had, and he comes up to my window and goes, "No, your dog found a gun." And I said, he goes, "No, come back and look." So I back up. He goes, "Pull the plastic back underneath the console." And he goes, look what your dog found." And I got down, I pulled the plastic back, and I looked, and I could see the butt of a handgun in some wiring.
Feel bad you didn't feed Titan at that point in time?
Yeah, I felt pretty bad. I was pretty new as a handler, and we always say in our industry, they always have career finds. He's found some phenomenal things since in his time that I've had him. Some stuff that'll just it's blown officers away, but this was probably his career find.
I'll pass on.
No questions.
Thank you, sir. You may stay down. You're free to leave.
Thank you.
You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you shall give in this cause will be the truth.
I do.
Good morning, sir. Please tell the jury your name.
My name is Detective Scott Sayers, S-A-Y-E-R-S. My badge is 7157. I'm with the Dallas Police Department Homicide Unit.
Detective Sayers, this is going with you being a police officer. How long have you been with the city of Dallas Police Department?
This is my 25th year.
Tell the jury a little bit about your career leading you up to being a homicide detective.
So graduating the academy, I started at Northwest Patrol, which is kind of Harry Hines 635 area. I did four and a half years there, and then from there I went to the Street Squad Narcotics Unit, which is a unit that typically just buys street-level drugs off the street. From there, I went to Southeast Patrol, and I spent 6 years in Southeast Patrol, where I promoted to senior corporal about halfway through my tour there, and I became a field training officer. Field training officers train recruits when they get out of the academy, so we do actual field training. I did that for 3 years, and then got a job, applied for a job in robbery, and I worked robbery unit for 11 months, and they needed another detective in homicide, and I volunteered to go to homicide after 11 months, and been in homicide for, this is my 13th year.
Fair to say you're one of the more senior guys in homicide right now.
I'm the senior guy.
Detective Sayers, I want to kind of ask you to explain to the jury just briefly how it is that the Dallas Police Department investigates homicides. Is it assigned to a detective? You guys work together? How does that work?
So it's a batting order, and if you can imagine us like a baseball team, we've got, like right now, we've got 13 batters. And if everybody is here and nobody's on vacation, then you just go in order. As they come in, when you catch a case, you go back down to the bottom of the batting order. And so I wasn't up for this case, but I'd caught a case probably a couple days prior to it. So that's how we assign the cases. And if you go all the way through the batting order, like baseball, then you're up to bat again. And so if you continue to catch cases, you just are up, up, up until, you know, you go on vacation. That's.
Detectives, you guys help each other out? If you're not the lead detective on a case, you get involved in other cases?
The night of, we typically try to get as many of us as possible on a case to try to gather as much evidence as possible. I wasn't on this case per se because I wasn't on call. I was working my own murders, and I missed being called in for this case because I had other cases that I was already working. But initially, we try to get as many detectives as possible on a case to talk with witnesses, gather evidence, surveillance video, what have you.
Regarding the murder of Kendra Hatcher on September 2nd, 2015, I want to direct your attention to a month later, October 2nd. Did you become involved in assisting with the investigation on that day?
I did.
How did you get involved?
So y'all just met Dan. Dan was in here testifying. He'd come to headquarters and he'd done a demonstration with his dog Titan. And what his dog Titan, he says, can actually do, we learned, can smell minute traces of gunpowder. So if we had a crime scene where we were looking for a gun that maybe somebody had hid in a field or an apartment complex that we can't find, or we have some shell casings that we can't find, he can bring his dog and he can put his dog in the area, and his dog will find any shell casings or guns that are in the area. And he did a demonstration for us where he hid, guns and shell casings around headquarters, and that dog went all through the bushes at front headquarters and found everything. I had never seen anything like that before. I was pretty sold on that dog. And so afterwards, I got information that an arrest had been made and a vehicle was at the pound that they were searching, and they were looking for a possible gun in the vehicle. And I told Dan, I said, hey, if you're not busy, would you mind running the dog through the car, just to say that we did it. We did everything possible to try to find evidence in the car, because I can't smell gunshot residue, and if you got a dog that specializes in it, we run that dog through the car, and if it doesn't find anything, then we gave a really good try to find as much as we could. And so he followed me out to the pound, and he put the dog in the car.
Detective Sayers, the jury's kind of heard from Special Agent Kaase about what Titan did out there and how he alerted. Just from your perspective, what did you see when you were out there when you were searching this car?
So we put the dog in the car, and Dan's kind of talking me through how the dog finds stuff and the signals that the dog will get. And he's telling me that cars are kind of complex because they're very closed in, and so it may be very concentrated if the scent I've seen Titan outside find things, and you can tell by where the wind is going. If the wind's going here and the evidence is here and the wind's going this direction, you can almost see Titan following the wind straight to the item. I've seen Titan do it. In a car, you don't really have wind variables, so the thing that we kept seeing with Titan that Dan was explaining to me, because this is my first time ever seeing the dog do this, was the dog came in, went through the car, and then it kept going down to the ashtray. And its nose would go from the ashtray up to the seal where I think the convertible met. And Dan was telling me that if Titan's hitting on something, you can imagine the scent of gunpowder escaping the car. It's going to escape where there's areas that wind can get out. So his theory was there might be something in the ashtray, so he took Titan out. And Titan will signal by just sitting. He doesn't bark or anything. So Titan would sit there, and then Titan would sit in the driver's seat. And Dan was like, he's on to something. And so we looked in the ashtray, didn't see anything. He pulled Titan out, put Titan in the car a second time, and Titan did the same thing. Hit on the ashtray area, and it's kind of a console that goes down. And so in my narcotics experience as well as patrol experience, I know that individuals can hide guns and drugs and weapons throughout the exterior or interior of the car, like behind the glove box, pull the radio out and stuff like that. I was concerned that maybe there was an area below the console where that you could access to see if there was any kind of weapon. And so I looked on the passenger side and noticed that there was some plastic for the console, the trim that had kind of been pulled up a little bit. I reached down there, pulled up the plastic, and I saw the butt of a gun sitting underneath the ashtray.
Your man, approach the witness.
You may.
Detective, I'm going to show you some photographs. These are State's Exhibits 192 through 212. And just for the record, 192, 193, and 201 are already in evidence. These photographs that depict what you saw when you were out conducting the search on this vehicle?
This is the car that we searched.
And as part of your investigation, you're provided information that this vehicle belonged to the person who's been arrested today before, Kristopher Love. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The jury also knows that Crystal Cortes is identified in State's Exhibit 192. This is Kristopher Love's vehicle. Your Honor, Officer State's Exhibits 194 through 200 and 202 through 212.
No objection, Your Honor.
Admitted.
Detective Sayers, I'm showing State's Exhibit 192, and that has been identified by Crystal Cortes as Kristopher Love's vehicle. That's the vehicle that you searched out there that day?
Yes, it is.
Let me kind of go through these so the jury can see what you were looking at. We'll go to 193, 194, as we just move around the vehicle. 195, we're looking in there. Was there anything that caught your eye there, or you just...
Not really. Yeah, not visibly.
196, we can see, and obviously the gun wasn't in plain view anywhere, was it?
No, it wasn't.
197, now we're looking at the back seat. 198, back seat. 199.
This is the front passenger side that I took interest in because the passenger side, you have more room. You don't have a steering wheel to contend with, so when we started seeing Titan hit on the ashtray, which you can kind of see below those, you can see the ashtray area kind of right here. I decided to try to look for something on this side of the car because you don't have a steering wheel to contend with. You have more space. So the plastic area kind of right here looked like it could be pulled up from the floorboard.
And I can zoom in a little on 200 and kind of show that ashtray area there that you're talking about. And the jury's already seen State's Exhibit 201. Is this kind of the area that shows where, when moving to 202, okay, Titan was showing that he found something?
He was hitting right here. He kept putting his nose right there and sitting in the driver's seat. And so we knew that there's something in the ashtray. We didn't know if it was a shell casing in, deep in it, pull the ashtray out maybe, or something under it. So I pulled this plastic right here away, pulled it all the way away, and you could see underneath there, there was a gun laying underneath, there's kind of an open area right underneath the ashtray.
So I want to show you then 203 now, sort of explaining that at this point, have you pulled back that plastic console there in the center and look at State's Exhibit 203?
Yes, that's exactly how it was. As soon as I saw it, I backed away, got crime scene, told them I have a gun. They photographed it how it was. We let them take photographs of how it is, and then we take the gun and clear it and start writing down information about the gun, the serial number, how many rounds are in it, and stuff like that.
So we can see exactly where it is. Point out what it is that you saw. I mean, where's this gun?
I saw that clearly.
What part of the gun is that?
That's the butt end of the gun where you put a magazine. That's the butt end where the magazine goes.
So you pulled out that gun, it was actually collected, is that right?
Yes, the crime scene collected it, and I had it sent to the lab to be compared to the other evidence that Eric had on the case.
204, now we see that gun after it's been pulled out of that kind of secret hiding place there, is that right?
That's correct.
206, a little bit closer, that's 205, a little bit closer up.
Yeah, they take pictures of the name, .40 caliber,
And what brand is that?
Smith & Wesson.
On 206, we see the other side of Smith & Wesson 40 caliber.
That's correct.
207,
That's the magazine emptied.
now were those bullets that were there next to the gun, were those actually in
Those were in the clip.
magazine?
Those were in the magazine. Clip magazine.
Easier way to say it, the gun was loaded.
Yes.
In 208, we see another view of the gun here, is that right?
Correct.
Now, you also opened up the trunk, just to be thorough in your search, and I'll kind of roll through here. 209, we're looking at the trunk, is that right?
That's correct.
Then in 210, what does that show in 210? We're kind of going to the driver's side door.
Yeah, it's a cell phone in the door.
In 211, we can see that cell phone after it's been pulled up. I think the jury knows by now DPD marks evidence with placards, and that's what 212 shows with the placard.
That was evidence piece number 2.
Let me go back to 208 so we can see the items there. We're going to approach the court reporter's reps of evidence. Detective, I'm going to start by showing you State's Exhibit 213. Now, just for the jury and for the court, this weapon has been checked and cleared by the bailiffs. So take a look at State's Exhibit 213. Do you recognize this?
Yes, it's the weapon that we recovered from the vehicle that you're seeing the pictures of.
Jury's looking at State's Exhibit 208. This is the actual gun.
It is.
We go to 214. What's State's Exhibit 214?
That's the magazine that you see in the picture.
State's Exhibit 215. I won't open it, but does this envelope contain the bullets, the live rounds that we see in State's Exhibit 208?
Yes, it's labeled quantity 11.
11.
And you can feel them. It's the live rounds that you see in the picture.
Our State Officer State Exhibits 213, 214, and 215.
No objection.
May I publish 213 and 214? This is a Smith & Wesson .40 caliber, and this is the magazine that was in it, Detective?
That's correct.
You mentioned that this gun could be sent off for testing somewhere to see if there was any way to connect it to the murder of Kendra Hatcher. Is that right?
We have several ways of testing firearms. One way is through NIBIN. You can take shell casings from one scene and compare them to another scene and see if they came from the same gun. You can also take projectiles that are taken from outside of a victim and tell if it was fired from a particular weapon. So anytime we think that we might have found the murder weapon, we will take that weapon to the lab, and the lab will do those tests, and they will be able to scientifically tell us if that is the murder weapon. And in this case, it was confirmed that it was the murder weapon.
Detective, I believe that's all the time we have. Your Honor, I pass the witness.
No questions, Your Honor.
Yes, sir, we stand down and freely in the courthouse. Basic lawyers up here, please. Members of the jury, let's take a lunch recess. It's about noon. You'll be back in the jury room a little, about 1:15.
All rise.
Okay, keep going. Gallery may be seated.
No.